can have to do it.
Okay.
You wish. You guys in Michigan and DC or wow. Philadelphia. Just for a few hours and then we go.
That's why we get to Philadelphia. It's like half a day in New York.
That's יולי. תבואי למשרדים, יש לנו משרדים חדשים.
They don't make them like this anymore.
It's just so gorgeous every time I come in here.
Welcome to the oldest public building in Evanston.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
The first one that had electricity.
Usually we see like the same thing. Oh, interesting.
Thank you. Sorry.
לא?
זה נחמד, נכון?
לא.
זה יציאה זה נחמד.
לא. זה לא דומה לבתי הכנסת פה. זה לא... כן, אתה חיים פה
מה
בן
שכחנו
דוד.
בגלל הרמדאן אין לנו כל כך. אבל זאת סיבה.
אנחנו עכשיו בפוזיציה. זה הולך להיות כאילו מה שאלה?
Good evening and welcome to Lake Street Church of Evanston. My name is Reverend Dr. Michael Wolf, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this sacred space. And it truly is sacred, not necessarily because of the architecture, but because of the holy conversation that we are about to have. Coming together to hear a little bit of the work that's going on with Staying Together is really important. I think it's important for a few reasons. I'm going to keep it really brief because you didn't come here to hear me preach like I would normally be doing here. But I'm just think it's so important because what I feel around the whole conversation Israel-Palestine is a lot of pessimism, a lot of defeatism, and I think that what we really have to learn from this conversation, well, I hope that some of the things you might take away, is that we don't have the luxury of that. The folks who are here are going to talk to us about what's going on within Israel-Palestine, people coming together across lines of difference to come together to make a new future for these places. I think that is so important because that's not necessarily what we see in the media. I think it's so important because it's not necessarily what we hear about, even if we're thinking about NPR and listening to it. We need this hope because if there's any accomplishment that we can talk about is that right now we seem to also have a failure of the imagination. And when we are here, we might receive a little spark of imagination about what the future could be. And that is so important in this moment. It is so important, and that is why I am so glad that you are here and that you've chosen to take some time out of your evening to be here. Welcome.
I want to thank Pastor Wolf for opening up this beautiful church for us to be together, and how important it is for us to be together across lines of difference in our interfaith community. As I was explaining to Rula and to Itamar, this is what we do in Evanston, that we come together across lines of difference for conversation, for learning, for growing, for struggling to really create a better society together. And that's exactly what Omdim B'Yachad Nakafman in Arabic is trying to do in Israel, and I am so honored to be able to facilitate this conversation. I am Rabbi Andrea London of Beth Emet the Free Synagogue here in Evanston, and I have been a fan and a supporter of Standing Together since it began. I actually had some conversations with people about it before it actually began, and to think now that they're entering their 9th year and how important the work that they are doing. And I came here, wearing my important Standing Together shirt here, in Arabic and Hebrew, and I like to tell this story that I got this t-shirt from Itamar the first time that I met him. Last February, I spent several weeks in Israel and in the West Bank, and I went out to the protests that were happening on Saturday night against the judicial reform. And I'm on the Standing Together WhatsApp group, and I noticed that they were getting together a little before the protests began so that you could learn the chants and participate in the chanting and the drumming that they do during protests. And so I showed up, and there were a small group of Israelis there, and then they kind of looked at me and thought, what are you doing here? And I introduced myself, and I said, I'm a big fan and supporter of Standing Together, and I'm friends with Sally Abed, who was here a couple of years ago with Alon Lee Green, 2 other wonderful leaders from Standing Together. And Itamar said, you're friends with Sally? Then you're a friend of ours? And he gave me this t-shirt. And then the next week I had the pleasure of meeting Rula Daoud, who took a solidarity group of people from Israel, Jews and Palestinians, to tried to go to the village of Hawara after the village had been rampaged, a village in the West Bank, and Rula led us on that trip, which was a difficult but important one, to stand together against violence and to stand together for peace and justice and dignity, and that's exactly what Standing Together does. So Itamar and Rula are, and it's really my honor and my privilege to be able to facilitate this conversation. Rula Daoud is the co-director of Standing Together with Alon Lee Green, and Itamar Avneri is also one of the leaders, and he was just elected to the Tel Aviv City Council. That Standing Together, yes, that's a wonderful news. And that Standing Together uses grassroots community organizing to bring people together across lines of difference to fight for social justice, for economic justice, for ecological justice, and to work on ending the occupation and creating peace and justice and dignity for everybody who lives in the region. As you will see, and they will tell you very clearly, that the sides are not Jews versus Palestinians. That's not what the conflict is between here. Many people think that's where the conflict is. The conflict, however, is between those who believe that the 14 million people who live between the river and the sea, half of them Jews and half of them Palestinians, there are people who believe that all those people should be able to live with peace and justice and equity and dignity, and there are people who believe that some should not have that right. Those are the sides, and Standing Together takes the side of peace, justice, dignity, and equity for all. And that's the side that I take personally, and I hope that all of you who've come here will take that side as well, and that we'll work together to create that so there will be better lives for everybody who lives in the region. Without further ado, I'm gonna let Rula and Itamar speak and share their story, and then we'll have an opportunity also for questions. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And thank you for having us and for coming. And I must say, it's been so long since I've been in a church. Yes, I wasn't able to celebrate Easter because I was here. I come from a Catholic family, and being here reminds me of, you know, the importance of family and the importance of community, and how we find in such places such big comfort, because these are the places that remind us of what it means to be really part of a community. And I was raised up as a Catholic, but I was never really religious. But there's something in coming back to a church that brings some kind of I don't know the right word in English, but some kind of comfort to the heart. So thank you for having us. And I do want to start by maybe giving some facts about the place both of us come from, that both of us really call home, and acknowledging a bit the differences of that same home that we both see as a shared home, but actually has much more difficult politics that enables us to live in real equality. And it is important for me to say that because in many ways, sometimes when we sit in front of people, some of the facts that we live through and the facts that we are born into, many people are not really, don't really have all of the information. So I come from a Palestinian family. My family lives, I was born in a small village called Kufr Yassif. It is in the north of Israel. Both my parents are Palestinians, I am a Palestinian, and I'm part of the 21% Palestinians who live inside of Israel, which are Israeli citizens. But I'm also part of the Palestinian people, which 4.5 million live in the West Bank under military occupation, military Israeli occupation, and 2.2 live in Gaza, who are right now under bombings, still war going on, starvation, destruction. So I have this more complex identity of also being a Palestinian, but also being an Israeli. And in many times it gives me some advantages, but in some ways it's also a curse, because I have to basically live both of the traumas, the difficulties, and in many ways, when we come abroad, don't really have legitimacy in front of people, because I am kind of both things, and people want me to just pick one side. So my story, to many people, it's much more complicated. And I do start with that because I do want to also to acknowledge the differences between being part of a minority in the Israeli society and being part of the majority, which is the hegemony in the Israeli society. I come from a very non-political family. My parents did not allow us to be political. Being brought up in a home where you are a minority, where your parents have lived through the martial laws of Israel, they basically want you to go to college, have a degree, come back, get married, have kids, and that's it. And now my story was a bit more different. And it was a bit more different even from most people who are my age, because we don't really engage with politics because we are afraid. We are born in homes that we are taught that it is not good for our future to be engaged in politics. But when we grow up and we go out of our village and we meet the Israeli society, which most of us, you meet Jews for the first time after 18 years when you go to college, you understand that you are not alone in that society and in that country. And we start to have, daily, small dosage of discrimination, of persecution, and sometimes it can come also to violence because we are, the minority. And it faces us in many occasions in life. But from my story, the first time I understood that it is hard for me at the place I was living in is when I finished my first degree. I am a speech pathologist. I studied and I finished first degree at Tel Aviv University. And I wanted to travel. And I looked at the map and I chose to go to Italy for 3 weeks. I had a little money saved up and I said, I'm gonna go to Italy for 3 weeks, to the beach, to the sun, good people, and then come back and start, working, entering the world of the real people. And when I came to the airport, many times we understand that there's, a different line of questioning when you're an Arab and if you're an Arab or a Jew. And I went through that same line. They asked me where I was going, and they asked me to take off my shoes, basically looked in everything that I had in my suitcase, and I went on. But before boarding to the airplane, I was asked to go to another security checkup. And that time they said, this is a random security check. And I was asked to go to a different room. And in that room, it was me and one more security woman. And she asked me to take off my clothes, to strip off, in order to have a security check. And I think that was the first moment I really understood how the country I live in, that is supposed to be my country, looks at me. And for that country, I was a threat. I was something to be, feared. And I was, this little person who just finished my first degree, and I did nothing in my life, and all I wanted was to travel to Italy. And I didn't really understand why I was standing there. But that was the first real moment I understood that the reaction I get for being a Palestinian, Arab Palestinian, is very different from what, the hegemony gets. But I went to Italy, and I had 3 weeks, and I had fun, and I came back. And I started working as a speech therapist, and I was working in a clinic in Ashdod. And Ashdod is a city in the south of Israel, and it's very close to the borders with Gaza. And it was the year 2014. Back then, it was again another war between Israel and Gaza. There were sirens. We were not allowed to go back to work. And when it stopped, when we had a ceasefire, people went back to their lives. So I went back to the clinic to work, And in the same morning, I went to the same bakery I always go to buy the same thing I always buy, because we have our rituals. And when I entered in the morning, there was a newspaper in the bakery. And in that newspaper, there was, the first page had pictures of the Palestinian kids who were killed by the Israeli bombings during that week. And a woman who stood next to me was looking at the newspaper, and she said, and she looked at it, and she just said, "I hope they all die. Let them all burn, they deserve it." Now, in these situations, in many times, you know, we choose to shut up, to not say anything, because I was the only Arab in the bakery, probably the only Arab in Ashdod, and we don't really take a stand. But, you know, that picture showed, I think, something like 75 kids, faces of kids. And I couldn't stay quiet. And I answered, and I said, yes, you're right. They should all burn. And then me and you can go to the rooftop of this building and listen to the kids in Gaza scream while they are burnt alive. And when I said that, there was a moment of silence in the bakery. Nobody spoke, nobody said anything. And I do believe it was the first time that woman really understood what she was saying, that she was wishing for kids to die, for innocent kids who had nothing to do. And at that day, I understood I didn't want to be a speech therapist anymore. And I started looking for a political home. And the politics in Israel are very difficult. You couldn't find a place, I couldn't find a place that has the same beliefs as I had of my identity, of reaching for equality, wanting real peace. And a year and a half after, I was in a demonstration in Jerusalem. It was what is called Jerusalem Day, when we have a bunch of extreme settlers who come from the West Bank, who just decide to march in the streets of Jerusalem, the old city, with the Israeli flags. And the only purpose of that march is to basically provoke the Palestinians who live in their homes in the old city. And we were standing, a bunch of people, trying to understand what to do. And then I saw a woman with this t-shirt, purple one, نقف معا عمدين بياخد, standing together. That woman had a megaphone, and she climbed one of the walls, and she just started shouting. And she was shouting for peace, for equality, for Jerusalem for all, for ending the occupation. And people shouted back. And then she shouted the same thing in Arabic, and people shouted back. And she kept doing that and went down the stairs and started marching to the streets of Jerusalem. And we just followed after her. And that was the first moment I saw a place, a political place, that I could call, you know, mine. It's not just because she spoke Arabic or because she held a sign in Arabic. It's because she called out for peace. She talked about inequality. She talked about reaching real rights for the people living in Jerusalem. And since then, I became an activist in Standing Together. And from 2017 until this day, I took part, just like Itamar, in too many struggles. The struggles we share together in our society are struggles to change the Israeli society. We are not just a movement that wants to have real Israeli-Palestinian peace, but we are a movement that understands the inequalities inside of our society, and we work for social justice, for economic justice, for environmental justice, and for real equality between the citizens who live inside of the Israeli society. And I think today, how many years we have been working together? Too many years. And I think having a movement that has thousands of people, and we will be talking about that, thousands of people, of activists, both Jewish and Palestinians in different places all over the country, was the main reason that we were able to stand up after the 7th of October, to bring people together and to be able to bring a different voice, a voice that speaks about stopping this war, about reaching real agreements, political agreements, and about saving the lives of the people who are living back in Israel, Palestine.
So hi, good evening. Thank you for having us here with your community. My name is Itamar, and I will tell you the story about how we founded Standing Together, but before that, it is important for us to say in every event. For me, it's the first time since October 7, I left the country. We are here for 2 weeks now, and although everybody are really, really nice, we really want to go home. And the reason we really want to go home, and the reason it was a hard decision for us to come, is that since October 7, our hearts are broken, and also our world is broken. For almost 6 months now, war is raging on Gaza. Innocent people are dying in masses. 14,000 children have died. Why? For what? For whom? We're still waiting for the hostages to come back. It looks like our government doesn't really care about their life. Or you know what? It looks like our government doesn't really care about any of us. They do not care about our safety. They do not care about the problems we're facing. All they care about is their messianic vision of occupying and expelling and resettling. And it feels like there's also a war over the soul of our society right now. The Israeli government tells us that it's us versus them, that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian, that the children of today are the terrorists of tomorrow, that the children we didn't kill in 2014 are those who committed the attack on October 7. They're trying to tell us that any moment now, Palestinians who are citizens of Israel are going to march on Jewish neighborhoods or Jewish cities. They're distributing guns. 100,000 weapons were distributed to the streets of Israel. By the way, all of them came from here. And they're trying to incite violence in the mixed cities. And so it was a hard decision for us to decide to leave all the members of our movement, all the activists, all of our allies and friends and partners, and to come here. But we also recognize how important it is to come here and say it as explicitly as we can in English, what we say also in Hebrew and Arabic back home. We demand an immediate ceasefire agreement that would stop the killing and the starvation and the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in front of our eyes. We demand it right now. We demand to bring back the hostages alive right now. We demand to end the occupation and to lift the blockade over Gaza. And then we demand our government to negotiate an Israeli-Palestinian peace, because we believe, actually we know, it's not just a belief, that only peace would guarantee what we all deserve on the land, which is independence and freedom and safety and justice and prosperity and the ability to imagine a future, to plan a future, and then actually build this future. This fight is our fight. This is what we are doing each and every day since October 7. But we came here to ask you, A, please believe in us. B, please do not leave us alone. Pick this fight with us, share this fight with us, and if you can, also, yes, support us. We need the resources in order to fight the Israeli right, in order to fight for a better future, for a better tomorrow for everybody. So if it's possible for you to donate and to share the message, it would be highly, highly, we really appreciate it if it's possible. Now, Standing Together, as Rula said before, it was founded in 2015. I was very lucky to be there when it happened. But I would like to start this story 4 years prior to that, in 2011. In 2011, we had what we called the social protest. It was our version of Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring or the Indignados in Spain. And if you're taking into account the size of the population of Israel, it was the biggest of them all. In one night, we had 500,000 people marching in Tel Aviv. If you try to translate it into American terms, it would be like 23 million Americans marching in New York or in Evanston, if there's enough place for 20, I don't know. And we had this chant, we had this slogan that, interestingly enough, we took from the Tahrir Square from Egypt. They shouted in Arabic, "Ashab yurid iskat al-nidam." The people want to overthrow the government, which is not a bad idea, by the way. And we took it and we changed it a little bit. We shouted, "Al-sha'ib yurid adala ijtima'iyya." Ha'am doresh tzedek chevrati. The people demand social justice. We shouted it in Hebrew and in Arabic, not in English. And for the first time in the history of Israel, when we said the people, we didn't mean just the Jewish people. And we didn't mean just the Palestinian people. We just meant the people, all the people on the land who deserve the same things and the same rights. Now, I was just a mere protester at the time, and although I was surrounded by tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, I felt really, really lonely, because no one approached me and asked me for my name or asked me why I came or if I want to do something more in this protest. We were the many, but we were not organized, and subsequently, we've lost. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, just completely disregarded our demands, and one day it was just all over. Many from our generation left the country out of despair. Now, I was always very, very political. At the age of 7, without knowing English, I was deeply involved in tracking the presidential campaign between then President Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. I had very strong convictions about this race, although I didn't know English. And I started to look for a different lane, different path for myself to engage in politics in my society. And so I decided to go and volunteer in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and I volunteered in the chamber of MK Dov Hanin. Dov is a very well-known figure in the Israeli left. And there I met some people who became good friends of mine, but also some of them were leaders of the social protest. And we used to speak about the social protest and to say that maybe one day we'll have the opportunity to do it differently. Now, in politics, many times opportunity comes as crisis. And indeed, in late 2015, we had a huge crisis. The third intifada broke. We called it the intifada of the loneliness or intifada of the nights. Terrible time in Israel, Palestine. Palestinians were afraid. Jews were afraid. There were attacks and lynches on the street. And one day, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, went to the press, to the media, and said with his baritone voice, "I'm being asked whether we will always live by the sword." And the answer, he added, is yes. Think about it. I remember where I was. I was at the gym. It was like a punch to the stomach. He was being asked whether we will live in a perpetual war, always, always, forever, kill and be killed. And the answer of the elected leader of Israel is yes. That's it. No hope, no nothing. Just take what it is, and this is how it's going to be forever now. And the even crazier thing was that almost no one in the political system of Israel tried to challenge him. Almost no one tried to say, "What are you talking about? Yes, of course it's very, very hard, but we can still fight for hope. We can still try to change things for the better." And so a bunch of us groups of activists, Palestinians and Jewish, who we all met through in the Israeli Knesset. We decided that if no one is going to give us hope from above, we're going to build it from below, from the streets. And we declared a demonstration, a peace demonstration in Jerusalem. We hoped for 300 people, maybe if we're lucky, 400 or 500 people. 3,000 came. Then we did another protest, a demonstration in Haifa. Again, a lot of people came. Then we had one in the Triangle area, which is mostly Palestinian area inside Israel. A lot of people came. Then we had one in Beersheba, in the Negev, and also in Tel Aviv. And people just came and came and came. And we understood that we're not alone in this search for hope. And with the lessons from 2011 on our minds, we decided that if we really want to build hope, it's not enough just to mobilize all those people. We have to organize all those people. We have to build a movement. And with the slogan from 2011 on our minds, the people demand social justice, we've decided this is going to be people's grassroots movement, a movement that would, with the aim of building the political power and political will, so we will be able to achieve what we all deserve, which is peace and equality and social and environmental justice. And this movement became Omdim Beyachad in Hebrew, Nakif Man in Arabic, Standing Together in English. Since October 7, our only goal is to save life. Immediately after October 7, we knew that the first thing we have to do is to prevent violence to occur between Jews and Palestinians inside Israel, especially in the mixed cities. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a minister in our government, told basically all of us that we have to take arms because the Palestinians are coming, Rula is coming to kill me. Just bullshit, right? And so the first thing we had to do was to prevent that from happening and to de-escalate the atmosphere. We've succeeded. There was no violence between Jews and Palestinians inside Israel. And now our goal is to stop the killing in Gaza and, as I said before, to achieve a ceasefire agreement and then an Israeli-Palestinian peace. We're doing that by mobilizing people with big campaigns on the ground, but also organizing people all around the country and also building the next leadership. We have 11 student chapters all around the country in colleges. They are amazing and energetic and younger than us and so brave, and we are trying to give them the right tools and the right words and language and to speak with them about our theory of change, so they will one day, hopefully very, very soon, would be able to lead the Israeli-Palestinian peace camp and then to be actually the leaders of the land. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Rula and Itamar, for sharing your story and the beginning of Standing Together. Itamar, you were talking about that in 2011 during the social protest movement, that there were hundreds of thousands of people going out into the streets, but nobody was organizing them, so that those protesters ended and people went home and nothing changed. And that Standing Together understood that you have to organize people. And Standing Together has worked on community organizing skills. We even brought people from the United States who knew how to organize in that way to help you organize.
Sure.
So I would like to hear a little bit more about how you organize on campuses, how you organize people, and what kinds of successes you've had, and what kind of organization you have now built.
Okay, so thank you. I would say Standing Together it's a democratic movement. We have, I think Rula said it, 5,000 paying members in the movement, and they can elect the leadership of the movement. We are organizing them in chapters, either local chapters or student chapters. We have 14 local chapters all around the country and 11 student chapters. Each chapter elects its own leadership, and each chapter is free to organize its people how they want to do that and to do whatever they want, as long, although, of course, it's, along the lines of our principles and our theory of change. And when we're building those chapters and when new members are coming into the movement, we have a series of training programs for them, and we're speaking with them about what we believe is the real tools in order to change our society. And I won't give you all the tools because that's a really, really long list, but basically what we are trying to tell them is this. Every political organization has to ask the same question. Who is us? Who is our political protagonist? When we say us, to who do we mean? And our answer is that we should create a new us in the Israeli society. Or in other words, we should create a new majority in Israeli society, a majority that consists, of course, from Palestinians and Jewish people, but also we're trying to bring together other communities inside the Jewish society and other communities inside the Palestinian society, people from the periphery and from the center, younger people, older people. And what makes us a majority is the fact that we have a lot of shared interests. We all share the same need for peace. We all share the same need for equality. We all share the same need for social justice. So this is the first thing we're telling them. The second thing we're telling them is that although our vision is to fundamentally change the Israeli society, and we are considered radicals in Israel, we are working within our society and with love to our society. We love our society. I love my society. The Israeli society gave me a lot of gifts during the years. So we are working all the time from within our society. And the third thing we teach them is that politics is not about condemning reality, is not about taking the higher moral ground, is not about a contest who shouts louder. It's about really, really changing reality. And if you want to change reality, you have to listen to the people. You have to be patient with other people. You have to find the places you agree with other people. And it's all right if you don't agree about everything. And when the members of the movement understand that, then we will have already have enough power in order to bring change into the Israeli society. And you ask about winnings, right? Victories. So I would say one thing, because it happened just yesterday. A few years ago already, we understood that it's very important to raise the minimum wage in Israel. It's extremely low, the minimum wage. There are 2 million people who are affected by it. Most of them, by the way, either Palestinian or Jewish from Ethiopian descent or ultra-Orthodox Jewish women who are highly marginalized in our society. And we decided that we are going to raise the minimum wage. We organized a big campaign in order to do that. We went to Palestinian cities. We went to Bnei Brak, which is a Haredic city in Israel. We did it with the shirts with the Arabic and Hebrew on them. And we just spoke with people. We asked them to sign the petition. Then we took the petition to the Knesset. We put a lot of pressure on a lot of members of the Knesset. It was a hard-fought campaign, and although we didn't achieve all of our demands, yesterday there was a raise in the minimum wage in Israel because of this campaign. And for us, it's a double victory. Because it's going to improve people's life. I mean, 2 million people are going to earn a little bit more than right now, which is always a good thing, but it's also for us a proof of concept that it is possible to pick those fights, it is possible to win those fights, and it is possible for very different communities to work together on this shared interest in order to improve everybody's life. So this is one example.
So what are the struggles you have, both within the movement and recruiting people to the movement, and people who are outside of the movement who are critical of you?
The struggles that we have. I mean, of course we don't agree on everything, and we have our own fights, and we have disagreements, but we also have principles that we work upon. We have a set of things that is our goal, and we have a strategy to get to that goal. We agree that we need to be working on a mutual interest inside of the Israeli society. We agree that we need to work and to build a movement that is also a peace movement, because we understand that one nation that is occupying another nation, nobody is going to be free. We also understand that we need to reach real equality within the Israeli society, because different groups do not have the same rights in the society we live in. But we do also understand that in order to do that, we need to work within and from our society. Now, what we get from the outside is inside of the Israeli society. First of all, the government doesn't love us. They don't love us. They think we are radicals.
Don't worry, we love you.
Yes. They think we're radicals, but we're not radicals. When Itamar spoke about raising the minimum wage, nobody thought that we could have hundreds of activists working together, both Jews, Palestinians, religious from Bnei Brak, ultra-Orthodox people, for a whole year campaigning together to raise the minimum wage. People always thought that you can't bring all of these communities together because they have too many different things and ideas from one another. But when we spoke to people and we asked them, do you believe that we don't earn enough money? They said yes. And then we asked them, do you believe that we work hard and we need to be paid accordingly? They said yes. And then we asked, do you believe that I, as a Palestinian, do I deserve to have the same as you have? They said, of course, yes. And then they said, okay, so you're with us. We have the same interest, and it is a shared interest. And they signed the petition, and we had a whole year of campaigning, of people meeting, planning, going out to the streets, putting pressure on the Knesset, on members of the Knesset, and it was going on for a year and a half. And yes, yesterday we saw a success. There was success for us. So we look our strategy to overcome the differences that we have, and especially the one that the government puts in our faces all the time, that you are two people, you cannot be united for any kind of struggle. We do that when we talk about the mutual interests of the benefit of the people who are living back home. And that is the same thing that we are doing today, after the 7th of October. Before the 7th of October, most people in Israel and in the West Bank also, and in Gaza, believed that, all of us should have independence, and most of them believed in two-state solution. After the 7th of October, that changed. People don't have the same answers. But people inside of the Israeli society, when asked, they still want to have safety. They do still want to live in peace, but they don't think it's possible. And why don't they think it's possible? Because nobody is offering them any solution of how to get to real safety, how to really have a peaceful life. And that is because our government, the Israeli government, has a pretty known agenda, and it's a very messianic and dangerous agenda of occupying Gaza, resettling Gaza, and just pushing 2.2 million Palestinians out of Gaza, keep on sending soldiers to fight and to die. And of course, nobody is speaking about how to bring back the hostages. So what we are trying to do is basically upon the same principles. What is our interest? And how do we get to there? Do we want to live in safety? Most people will tell you yes. So we have to give them that alternative road to how can we get to real safety. How do we, both citizens of Israel, but also people living in the West Bank and people living in Gaza, can have real safety, real independence, and real security for all of us? And the answer to that is to have, I forget in English, to have agreements, to have political agreements, to start negotiating with the other side, and not to keep on having continuous wars and wars and wars. And that is the voice that we are trying to bring right now into the Israeli society. Now, I know we also got some criticism from abroad, but that kind of criticism doesn't really affect our work back home, because we work with our people, we work in our communities, and our reality is very different, unfortunately, and maybe not unfortunately, from the realities and the way people see our conflicts. So our main work is within our society on same principles, just having different strategies in different struggles.
All right, well, so now that you've gone to the difficult question, I think we'll dive right into it. You know, one of the things that we have seen in our country, as you have spoken about, are these, you know, very stark divisions. That people are either supporting Palestinian rights or people are supporting Jewish rights, and not being able to see, as you are bringing, that actually we need to be coming together and that we need to be struggling together. So I want you to speak a little bit to that, to what our reality here is for people who say that Palestinians are oppressed and the only thing that we can do is, you know, overthrow the Jewish regime, the hegemony in Israel, and that's what we should be working on. And Rula, here you are a Palestinian, you're saying, no, there's something that's different here. There's a different way of going about this. Talk about that a little bit more for us.
Well, you said it when you opened. We live with facts back home. There are facts, not just, you know, kind of hoping or having these delusionist ideas of maybe someday we will wake up and 7 million Jews who live back home will disappear, or 7 million Palestinians who live back in Israel, Palestine will disappear. These are just like kind of fantasies that the only one that has us is Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and they do have an agenda. They are working on an agenda. But still, the fact is, when we wake up, when we go back home, there are still 7 million Palestinians, 7 million Jews, and nobody is going anywhere. Too many wars. The only thing we've had from these wars is more blood, more killing, more victims, more hatred, and it is taking us apart and far from the idea that we can have real safety in our homes. And I think working from these facts puts us in a different place than from what people see in here. We are born into a society that in some places it's shared, in some other places it's not shared, but has both of these people living on that land. And we do want to understand how can we really live together and how can we build a mutual future, because nobody is really going anywhere. And I can keep saying that because it is a fact. And I think when you are also faced with that question, you should bring up that fact to people, that when you sit in here and I hear that chant from the river to the sea, and everybody says this, you know, from his own part. Some say from the river to the sea only Palestinians, from the river to the sea only Israel. What we say is that from the river to the sea, everybody should be free. That is a fact, and that is something we demand daily. And I think the way that I would like to see communities abroad react, and I know your communities are very polarized right now. We see it, we've heard it, we've been here for a week and a half. Yes, and social media is not helping. But I think a way to maybe tackle it from a different point, maybe to try also to convince other people, is by telling people that there is a big difference between the Israeli government and the Israeli people, the same way that there is a big difference between the leadership that we have in Gaza, which is Hamas, and the Palestinians who live in Gaza. All of the Palestinians are not Hamas, the same way that all of the Israelis are not their government. And we, both people, are suffering from our governments. We have governments feeding one another. Basically, the Israeli government wants Hamas to stay in power because it serves its agenda. And they're feeding one another. And the only ones who are suffering are us, the people living back there. So if you want to talk to your people to taking a different road to speaking for us, tell them to speak about the people living in Israel, Palestine, that if they want to go out and demonstrate, you should demonstrate, but you should be demonstrating for the freedom, for the liberty, for the independence of both people living back in Israel, Palestine, and not for our governments.
May I add something? Of course, I agree with everything, but I just wanted to add that when we speak about coming together, working together, Jews and Palestinians, we don't mean that we just need to find the middle ground. No, there is occupation. That's a fact, and we should end it. There is Jewish supremacy or ideology of Jewish supremacy in Israel. That's a fact. We should eradicate this ideology. There is military control. That's a fact. We should stop it. But it won't be possible, it will never be possible to do all of that if you try to bypass the people who are living on the land. Only the people back home in Israel, Palestine, the Palestinians and the Jewish people will be those who will eradicate Jewish supremacy and will put an end to the occupation and put an end to the siege and put an end to the wars and achieve peace. So if you want to speak about all of those facts also here abroad, by all means, do that. But if what you're doing right here is going to compromise with our efforts in building inside our societies the political will and power in order to achieve all of those targets, if what you are doing is compromising us, then by all means, I'm sorry, I know it's a church, but by all means, shut up. Just shut up, because if you're doing that, if you're not shutting up, although you understand that, I don't know, you're fighting for, I don't know, for yourself. Rula said it in your house a few days ago. You're trying to liberate yourself through us, but you're not working for us and you're not saving lives. So I think that's what people should understand.
So just to take this just a little bit further, there is a Palestinian solidarity movement that began in 2005 called BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, that has encouraged peoples and governments and organizations to boycott, divest, or sanction companies that invest in Israel, profit from the occupation, et cetera. And that movement came out recently and said that standing together should be boycotted. Standing together should be boycotted because it promotes normalization, or as we say it in Hebrew, normalizatia. I don't know how we say it in Arabic, probably the same thing. Normalization, and normalization meaning that there has been parts of Palestinian society that have said to Jewish society, you know, don't come and do cultural exchanges for us and then go back to your comfortable homes inside of Israel if you're coming over to the West Bank, and leaving us in the situation that we're in, and that you feel good about yourself because you've had this nice cultural exchange, but you haven't changed our lives at all. And that's really what normalization means, is that Jews can feel good about cultural things or other things with Palestinians and not actually change the situation on the ground. On the other hand, That's exactly the opposite of what Standing Together is. That Standing Together is a movement that says, no, we want to change the status quo. We want to end occupation. We want to end Jewish supremacy. We want to create equality. We want everyone to live in dignity, but we want to do it together. So I don't know if you have anything to say about what the BDS movement has said about your movement.
But I do want to elaborate. It was a part of the BDS movement, that the whole BDS movement who had that declaration. And I think, you know, when we are talking about a force that is occupying another nation, that is having a war, so yes, we should be thinking on what kind of sanctions do we put on that force, on that government, to have some kind of an effect to stop what is happening. Should we be boycotting violent settlers? Yes, we should be boycotting violent settlers. Two of them are right now ministers in our government, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Should we be boycotting big companies that give a military and more money for Israel to buy more guns? Yes, we should be boycotting them. But should we be boycotting a movement that has Jews and Palestinians in it, and that is working inside the Israeli society to end the occupation, to stop the siege and stop the war, and build a real future of equality and independence? I think not. Movements who work to changing the status quo are movements that we need. Okay, and that is what Standing Together is trying to do. When the BDS or fragment of the BDS said that, they're actually, by asking people to boycott us, they are giving more power to the right wing, because the voices that you can hear and can make a change from within the Israeli society have been asked to, you know, you're asked to not basically have any kind of communication with that, which means, again, you are giving this huge present to the right wing. And right now, the right wing in Israel has so much money, so much power, is in the government, getting so much support from here, from the US. And if you really want, if these organizations really want to do something, they should be thinking of how they can affect what the right wing is doing right now in order to give movements such as Standing Together more space to work. That would be my answer for the BDS movement.
Just maybe to add a little thing, I mean, I think their fundamental mistake was that they, from our perspective at least, they forgot that there is always a distinction between the government and the people, between the government and the society. When Donald Trump was president of the United States, were you all Donald Trump lookalikes? No, right? I mean, you still had your opinions and organizations and the Democratic Party, etc. That is exactly the same way with each and every society. And so, if you want to stop the policies of the government, again, by all means, do that. Try to do that. But never boycott the people, never boycott the society, and for sure do not try to boycott those who were born into this situation and trying to change it from within. I mean, I think that was ill-advised, to say the least.
So we have seen since October 7th that the polarization has increased, and that the public polling, you know, both within the Jewish and Palestinian sector within Israel and in the West Bank and Gaza, has seen people moving more to polar extremes, and not being as concerned about the safety of the other, being much more fearful of the other. So you have, you know, big mountain to climb right now. So tell me how you have been able to convince people at this time of great polarization, where people are traumatized and people trust each other less, where the governments are able to play on people's fears and to convince the Israeli society that the war should continue, And the same thing is in some ways is happening in Gaza as well, that people are becoming more supportive of Hamas as they are also in the West Bank. What do you do now that you see this polarization? How does the movement work, and how do you convince people not to play into their fears and into their trauma at this time?
I'm not gonna lie, of course it's very hard and we're not always succeeding in doing that, but the basic fact is that if you go in the streets of, be it Haifa or Tel Aviv, Jaffa, or what have you, Lod, Jerusalem, and you'll ask someone, do you feel safe? The answer would be no. The answer would be no. No one is feeling safe right now on the land. And then we can ask this person, well, if right now, although the Israeli military is attacking with so much force on Gaza, and although right now in the West Bank it's the deadliest year in 2 decades, if right now we do not feel safe, do you really believe that another war would make us feel safe? And some people would argue with that, of course, and would say, yes, because we have to do, etc., etc., etc. But then we can remind them that it's something like the 14th war that Israel waged on Gaza in the last 2 decades. And I think when people hear that, they at least listen a little bit, and they also understand that we are coming from a place of not trying to lecture them, not trying to be more moral than them. We're talking about their lives. We're talking about their safety. We're talking about the safety of their children, of their families. We are talking about their self-interests. And if the minute they understand that, the minute they understand that we do care, genuinely care also about them and not coming to lecture them, there's all of a sudden room and space for conversation, and then we can start having this conversation and start to speak about what is it that we need to do. Many times, Jewish Israelis would answer that, yeah, but there's Hamas on the other side. And then what we would say is that, do you know when Hamas was at its weakest point ever? It was during the 90s, during the Oslo Accords. Now, the Oslo Accords were far from perfect for Palestinians, also for Israelis, Jewish Israelis, but there was at least some hope. And Hamas was at its weakest because of this hope. And so if people do not feel safe right now, and of course they want to be safe, what we are telling them is that if you want to eradicate fascist ideologies, you cannot do it with military power. It will never, never work. You're doing it with hope. You're doing it with other big ideas. You're doing it with peace, and history proves that. And so this is how we try, at least, to engage in a conversation and to convince people. And I said before, not everybody are convinced. Many, many people in the Israeli society, in the Jewish Israeli society, moved to the right, but then again, the movement, our movement, has grown immensely since October 7. So yeah, a lot of people do listen and then join the fight, which is extremely important.
So tell me about some of those people who have joined since October 7th. What have they said to you? Why are they joining this movement now? And I'd like to hear about maybe an example of a Palestinian and a Jew who've joined the movement and why they said this is the time, and they weren't ready before October 7th, but they're ready now.
I think, since the 7th of October, we had grown. We had young people joining, especially Palestinian people and students. After the 7th of October, our government, the Israeli government, was not able to give any answers to the people. did not take responsibility for what happened, and there was big campaigns of incitement. Our government wanted more violence in the streets. They basically talked about that in the news, and they also distributed 100,000 guns to people who came from here. These 100,000 guns went to right-wing people, and especially settlers. But when we started with understanding everything that was happening, the first thing we did, the first step was to ask people to come to meetings and to come to conventions in order to speak about what was happening. 2 weeks after the 7th of October, and until this day even, we were still inside of a trauma. We were still afraid, not understanding what will happen. There was missiles to Israel, there were bombings on Gaza, there were campaigns of just kind of arresting anybody who would speak about our government's politics, or even anybody who would say anything about what was happening in Gaza. Like if anybody would write down, "My heart goes to Gaza," to the innocent people in Gaza, the police would question him. So the atmosphere was very intense. So when we called out to people to come to conventions, and we had thousands of people coming to our conventions in different cities at the first 2 weeks, all the people wanted to do is to sit down, speak, and basically cry. People needed that place that could tell them that what you are feeling is mutual. Both of us are afraid right now. Both of us are in trauma. There is pain. The pain you are feeling is legit. Also, my pain is legit. And we had to have that kind of a conversation in order to be able to sit down and think, so what do we do next? How do we keep on from this point? And I think Itamar has a very good story about 2 women who came to a meeting in Lord Romley. Yes, there is. You say it better than me.
Okay, so I will tell it. I didn't know I was about to tell it, although it's not exactly what you asked. So, because we were very afraid of violence, or the possibility of violence, between Jews and Palestinians in the mixed cities, we formed Jewish-Arab solidarity guards all around the country immediately after October 7th. The first one in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, we formed it on October 8th, okay? Just immediately after October 7th, in order to de-escalate the atmosphere. And we called the people to come to meetings and to talk what is it that we can do together in order to prevent violence to occur in your specific town or city. And 2 or 3 weeks after October 7, we had a meeting in Ramla. Ramla is a mixed city in center Israel. Rula and I, we went there together because we are on tour also in Israel, not only in North America. We're traveling together usually. There was something like 30 people in the meeting, about half of them Jewish, half of them Palestinian. And we came a bit late, and when we entered, there were 2 women there who just sat and cried. They cried and cried. They were weeping, and when we asked them why they're crying, the first one, she was a Palestinian woman, she said she's crying because just the day before she learned that a few members of her family were killed in Israeli bombings in Gaza. Now, think about it. She had all the reasons in the world not to come. She had all the reasons in the world to hate everything that has something with Jewish-Arab partnership. And even though she had all of those reasons, she came, right? She was there and she shared her story, and yes, she cried a lot and she was angry, of course, but she came to the meeting in order to speak about what it is that she and other people are going to do in order to prevent violence and promote shared future with all her pain. The other woman that cried, she was a Jewish woman, and she told us she's crying because just a few days before that, 4 or 5 days before that, a missile shot from Gaza hit her house and basically ruined her house. She had no house. And again, just like the Palestinian woman, she had all the reasons in the world not to come and to hate the idea of Jewish-Arab partnership, but she chose to came. And she came and she told her story and she participated in the conversation and she fought with all of us what is it that she and all of us are going to do in order to promote this shared future. And so I'm thinking about them quite a lot. That's why I'm also usually telling this story, because it's a story about radical empathy, and it's a story about amazing courage, and it's a story about taking responsibility over your society. And I'm constantly amazed by those two women. And so they are example for people who just, it was their first meeting, by the way, of both of them, who joined the movement. And I think, in a way, it's also the story of each and every individual who joined Standing Together since October 7. People back home are in deep pain still. We are all immersed in trauma. When we're hearing ambulances here on the streets, Rula and I, we both jump immediately because we're extremely traumatized from everything. And people feel like they need a place that would remind them there's still hope and there's still other possibilities. And so some of them came immediately after October 7 because of that need. Some of them are becoming right now, becoming disillusioned with this war, understand this war is going nowhere, seeing that the hostages are not coming back, and so right now they are coming, and I think that is basically what we hear from everybody who come to the movement. And I would also say there are a lot of people who still haven't come to the movement, although we speak with them. I'm talking even about families and friends, and what we always tell them is that's fine, that's all right. We will still be here when you will be ready to come, and I think this is also very important for people to hear and to know about us.
So we have a couple of minutes for questions, but Congresswoman Schakowsky, before you go, we just want to recognize our Congresswoman. And I was going to say that the first person who gets to speak, if you'd like to say anything, is you. I would like to give you an opportunity.
Well, it's such an honor to be with all three of you, including my rabbi, and to raise the hope of peace and reconciliation, envision a time when we can work together. These are terrible, difficult times. People ask me what keeps you up at night. This is what keeps me up at night. But I just am so grateful for the work that you're doing with Standing Together. And you give us hope for the future and a pathway to get there. So let's all work together for peace and love and justice. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
And Rula Nitamar, you have to know that Congresswoman Schakowsky has been one of the greatest champions of peace for Israelis and Palestinians, and has been working on that for many, many years. And so we're really proud of the work that she does. And so we'll have a chance just for a couple of questions. I don't know if those microphones can be used or not, or I'll just repeat the question there if it can't be heard. Yeah, go ahead. So what's the end game and how are you going to get there? But I think that you have an answer for that. So
I will let Rula answer, but just about Netanyahu, he has an end game. His end game is just perpetual war. I mean, no end game is his end game.
Our end game is to get to a place where we know that both people living in Israel and Palestine will have the same things, which is equality, liberty, freedom, and independence. Now, it's not me talking about putting, drawing a line on a map and how should that be looking, because right now, our society is not asking that question at all. Our society is in a place where you have to fight over its soul, and our main work right now is to build that political power in people's minds that they can understand and believe that they should be fighting for other causes. So then when both of our leadership from both sides will sit down together and see what will be the end game of all of that, what do we agree on, they have to come with basic principles that we believe in. And in order for our leadership to have these principles, we need to work and organize people as many as we can, so they can put pressure on our politicians, so when they sit down, they understand that they need to agree that both people living home deserve safety, security, independence, and liberty. One-state solution, two-state solution, federation, it doesn't really matter as long as they take these principles with them. That is our main goal right now.
And just to double down, Sure. We're not lacking good ideas. That's the thing that I think people should understand. There are many good ideas. None of them is perfect. Two-state solution, one-state solution, a confederation. But that's not the problem. The problem right now is that even if we will be able to replace the Israeli government, if we'll have elections tomorrow, probably Benjamin Netanyahu won't be the prime minister, and Benny Gantz probably would be the prime minister. Maybe Yair Lapid would be the prime minister. But nothing will change on the ground if we'll just change the government, we'll just change the prime minister who's heading the government. Because right now, there is not enough people, or not a big enough group of people inside the Israeli society who demands our leadership to get to the negotiation table and genuinely seek a solution that would ensure the freedom and the independence and the safety of everybody. So what we are trying to do is to build this political will and this new majority. It's going to take time. It's not going to take a week, and it's probably not going to take 1 or 2 years, but we are working in this direction, and in order to achieve that, we always mobilize people so we'll be able to widen the overtone window and to just add another option on the menu, because right now what Israelis hear are only the suggestions of the Israeli right. So we are always insisting on putting this idea of, or possibility of Jewish-Palestinian peace on the table, so people would be able to also coalesce around this idea, and then to build the infrastructure in order to, you know what, not even persuade the government, to force our government to do that. And so we're building this movement with right now 14 local chapters, as we said before, and 11 student chapters. We have these programs, training programs, leadership programs, in order to train the next leaders who would be able to lead our camp, lead our society toward this direction. So this is our goal and our objectives and our end game. And of course, there would be other forces involved, parties and stuff like that, but we're doing our part in this mission.
And we have to remember, I mean, Itamar just won a seat on the Tel Aviv City Council, Sally Abed, another leader in standing together, won a seat on the Haifa City Council, and the movement understands that you need to start at the city council level and then continue to move up, and so building political power from the grassroots, which is what's really, I think, different standing together. It's really a movement that has an organizational strategy to build that power and to force that power, and not just to be on the streets protesting, but to change the society. Okay, we have time for literally one more question. You know what I can do? If I ask you to just ask a question and not make any speech, then I can take more than one. I can try to consolidate them. So I'm going to try to take a few, but again, only a question. If you talk for more than 30 seconds, you get cut off. Yeah.
Is there any collaboration with other schools,
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All of them.
Good.
All
So
of
any
them.
other collaborations? Yes, there are those other collaborations. Tony, I saw your hand. Okay, good. Who are the allies? Hold on, we're going to take a few more, and then we're going to get this here together. Yep, great.
what demand should we put on our government?
Okay, good, perfect. Demand on our government, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cantor Davis, for saying that. Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Okay, so allies in Israel, allies in the West Bank, but we should be saying, forcing our government, maybe even who the allies are here also. Eliza, I saw your hand.
I want to know about Hezbollah and what's going on.
Oh, okay, a little bit what's
Ooh,
happening
that-
up
that
in the
would take
north.
us time.
Okay, Larry.
I'm very curious, is anybody doing similar work to you in Gaza?
Anybody doing similar work in Gaza? I actually know one person who was, and he got thrown in jail for it. Yeah.
I work in Chicago with high school and middle school students, and I am curious, I'm thrilled that you're working with college students in Israel. Is there anything happening with
Younger kids in Israel. So good question. Yep.
There's an issue, at least in the United States, potentially in Israel and Palestine, about semantics over Zionism versus anti-Zionism. I'm wondering if that is an issue in Israel
No.
and Palestine.
Yeah, the Zionists,
is
the
when you
whole
have the
colonial
time-
stuff. They've already said, that's our problem and not theirs. Yeah.
Yet, if there are semantic issues, how do you get beyond those issues of labels and titles?
Okay, so it's a
So-
lot of different things, but great thoughts that have come together. So we're going to give you a chance to do that. So what do we do about the
I will try to
labels,
fill up the
titles, allies, what we should be saying to our government, and anything you can say about what's going on up north if you want to say about
So
Hezbollah.
about terminology, it's extremely important speaking truth to power and speak about the facts and what's going on, but we are trying to avoid inflammatory rhetoric, and we're just speaking about the numbers, speaking about the names, the stories of people. We find it much more powerful in order to mobilize people and to convince people. And when people ask us, why do you say this and not that? We're asking them because our mission is not to condemn reality, is to change reality, and that is the idea. What was more regarding allies inside the Israeli society? Of course, there are a lot of organizations we are working with, and we're also working with a lot of politicians and parties. Some of those organizations, Women Wage Peace, Breaking the Silence, Peace Now, the Parent Circle, and many more. We also have allies and organizations we are working with in the occupied West Bank. Standing Together do not organize people inside the West Bank. It will be illegal for us and highly dangerous for them. But when we come to the West Bank and protest there, of course we are doing it in collaboration with people from there, and we are taking their cues. There was a question about Gaza. I think right now in Gaza it would be impossible to do such a work. I mean, under the circumstances, I think it's quite obvious why. Of course, there are people who believe in peace in Gaza and trying to build a future of peace also from Gaza, but it's extremely hard from many, many reasons. And what was the...
Young people. You're working with people in high school and younger.
Okay, so another organization we are working with is Yad B'Yad, Hand in Hand in English. This is a chain of schools, Jewish Arab schools. They teach children both in Arabic and in Hebrew, and because they're doing this work, we don't need to do this work. And this is basically the basic idea of coalitions, right? Each and every organization doing its part.
There was a question about what's going on up north with Hezbollah.
Well, basically, a war started in the north 2 weeks after the 7th of October. It didn't just happen now. Just the media didn't really talk about it. My parents, my grandma, they come from more to the north. They close to the borders with Lebanon. And a war started 2 weeks after the 7th of October. And right now what is happening, there are still missiles coming from the south of Lebanon, Hezbollah, to Israel, but Israel is also attacking deep inside of Lebanon. And Syria right now. And we see it as, again, forces who feed one another. And the only way that Israel is now also bombing deep within Lebanon, not just in the south, is just to furthermore, prevent us from having an end to this war and prevent us from really having elections, because no one in the Israeli government right now will dare to take the nation into elections as long as there is war. So it's another political way to prevent any kind of change. Again, powerful people that sit in politics use their power and make other people suffer in order to remain at the same place they are in right now.
And there was the question about what you should demand your government. So, A, stop with this blank check policy toward the Israeli government. B, demand immediate ceasefire in Gaza. C, condition the aid. Really, it's ridiculous that the Israeli government, I said it before, I said it at the start, I think, is getting this unconditional military aid. Condition the aid. And it's important for me to say, take it from an Israeli Jewish guy, okay? If you'll do that, it's not anti-Israeli, okay? You'll do that, it would be good for Palestinians and it would be good for Jewish people living in Israel. It would be an act, or at least we would interpret it as an act of love and solidarity also toward the Israeli society, because as Rula and I said time and again, the Israeli society is different than its government, and I dare say we are better than our government, just like, and it's also extremely important to say, the Palestinian society is better, much better than Hamas. So demand your government to do that and to choose the side of the people, the side of life, the side of solidarity, the side of peace, the side of Palestinians and Israeli who desperately need hope and change. Thank you.
Thank you to Hula and to Itamar, to the hope that you give us for the organization that is building the change that is possible in the future. I was in Israel on October 7th, and we went down to the Mediterranean to go swimming because it was a beautiful morning, and we were in Haifa, and then we came back, we began to hear what was happening, and we didn't quite know. It was 8:30 in the morning, but we were getting dressed to get ready for the day and then to leave that night. And I dug through my suitcase, and I pulled out my Standing Together shirt, And I said, I know that something terrible is happening, and I have to wear something that's going to give me hope about the possibility of peace and justice and dignity for the future. And so this was my shirt from
Thank
October 7th and continues to be close to my heart. Thank you for all
Thank
your
you.
amazing work.
Thank you for coming. And that is, I was about to say, I
we're
will
gonna
take
say that.
1 more minute from your time. We are here also to, yes, spread the word, yes, to try to put pressure on politicians, yes, to ask you to put pressure on your politicians, but we also need money. And we are bad at asking that. We are one of...
So I'll ask.
Yeah.
Give money to Standing Together.
Yes. If you want to donate...
We should have some flyers out here.
I'm not sure they're here.
I'm not sure we
There's
have.
Just Google Standing
there's no
Together.
flyer.
Yes.
Okay, so go to Standing Together. It's very easy. Standing Together English. There's a very easy way to donate. You can do it right now. Take out your phones. Everybody's got their phone with them. Take a moment. If you can give $5, $10, right? I can start doing a paddle raise here or something. Just take... Pardon? There is, but if you say Standing Together English, I think you can get.
Yeah, and we have purple everywhere. So
Right.
that is us. Yes, this one.
It's purple, right? You just have to look for the purple, right?
So you can donate one time. You can become friends of Standing Together and give a monthly donation. Anything you can give would help us, because we are going back home to a place where we have right-wing extremists with all the power, all the money, and we do need money in order to bring campaigns, to organize people, to build a new leadership, and to make a real change in our home. So thank you very much for listening to us, and if you can, again, please donate.
Thank you very much.